Hey there, and welcome to week 2 of our course, our Old Testament survey course. It's been great already, kind of getting to know you and beginning this journey together. We covered a fair bit of material in week 1. We're going to jump into the story in a big way here in week 2. So, first off, go ahead. And yeah, I do have a cheat sheet beside me, so I don't have to memorize everything I need to remember to tell you. So, I will be glancing over at it time to time. But go ahead and find the timeline sheets and biblical covenant sheets found in the course document folder. Okay, so take a minute. You can pause me. Oh, sorry. You can pause me and do that, and you'll need those for this lecture and follow along. We're going to move pretty rapidly. This is not going to be the longest lecture today. I know that saddens a lot of you, but here we go. So far in the course, we've had a brief overview of Genesis. Genesis 1 through 11 is called the primordial or primeval or universal history, where the questions of how did the world as we know it come to be get answered. From there, we entered into what is known as the ancestral cycles, otherwise known as the period of the patriarchs. And on your timeline, these are covered from Genesis 12 until the end of the book of Genesis. Of all of these cycles, we focused most on Abraham, which begins in Genesis chapter 12 and ends in chapter 25. We saw how the Abrahamic covenant came to be and how God is trying to mend the relationship between himself and humanity after what happened in Genesis 3, which is known as the fall. In fact, I think I mentioned to you last week that the whole of the story of the Bible is about God working to mend this relationship between humans and God. It's with Abraham that we get the familial covenant from, we see that in Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, this call of Abraham, where Abraham is promised land and descendants if he will follow God faithfully. So from here, we want to enter into the story of another iconic figure from the period of the patriarchs, a figure known as Moses. Maybe one of the most important characters in all of the Bible, certainly in the Old Testament. So for this module, I had you skim the details of Moses' story. So we won't get into tons of detail here. Instead, I'm going to give you a really rapid overview of Moses. Here we go. Moses is born. He is miraculously saved by Pharaoh's daughter. He grows up in the household of the Pharaoh, even though he's a Hebrew. He exits the household quickly when he's young. He receives his calling from Yahweh at the burning bush. He then leads the future Israelites to safety out of Egyptian oppression and slavery in a story that is known as the Exodus. He receives the Ten Commandments and the Torah, and he gives it to the people, establishing the Mosaic covenant at Mount Sinai. And he becomes, again, one of the most important people of the Bible right next to Abraham. I want to take a minute to kind of cherry pick two of the most important parts of the Moses story. So the story at the burning bush and the establishment of the Mosaic covenant. So Moses receives this call from God or Yahweh at the burning bush. He's out there tending to his sheep and goats, minding his own business, and he sees this bush and it's burning and it doesn't stop burning. And he goes over to see what's going on. And there's a whole lot more that's significant that's going on here than maybe you've grown up hearing about or knowing about. So this is where God gives his name to Moses, the name Yahweh. Exodus 3, verse 14. God calls Moses to return to the Pharaoh and demand that he let the Hebrew people to go free from slavery. And Moses says to God, "Who will I tell them you are? Who will I tell them who sent me?" And God says in Hebrew, Eyer Asher Eyer, which means I am who I am, or I will be who I will be. And this is significant for two reasons. First of all, it's important to remember that Moses was born and raised in Egypt. He ate their food. He thought the things that they thought. He was raised in a polytheistic culture, and that means that polytheism is they believed in many gods and they worshipped many gods, including the Pharaoh, who was considered one of the chiefs of the gods, or maybe the chief god. So when Moses asks the question, "Who are you?" he might have simply been saying to God, "Which God should I say that you are?" Or which of the gods, so I can tell Pharaoh which God sent me. And as a response, Yahweh gives the most broad answer possible, making a really indirect but interesting theological statement. He says, I am the God. So second, let's turn our attention to something called ontology, or the study of existence. This is another case where the Western mindset is very different from the Eastern mindset. In the Western mindset, if I said the wall is, what I'm trying to say is the wall exists, right? In the Eastern mindset, if I say the wall is, I'm relaying that the wall is doing something. It is serving a function. It's acting as a barrier. The difference can be applied here ontologically. When God says I am, he may not just be saying I exist. Rather, he may actually be saying I am the God who makes things happen. Okay, so there's a real difference there. Not just existence, but this is the God who acts and moves. So second thing, the Mosaic covenant. Beginning in Exodus chapter 19, we get what's often called the Sinaitic or Sinaitic account, where Moses goes up and down Mount Sinai several times in order to act as a go-between or mediator between God and the Jewish or Israelite people. Remember, covenant making is all about establishing a relationship. And in this scene, Moses obtains the Ten Commandments and also all of the rest of the laws from God and gives them to the people and establishes a covenant with the people in Exodus 24. So take your covenants sheet that you can see. Oh, there it is right here. Take your covenants sheet and take a look at it on your covenants chart. The covenant functions as a national covenant, operating under the umbrella of the Abrahamic covenant. The law given in this covenant calls specifically for Abrahamic-type faith, and at the same time provides a constitution for a theocratic nation, in other words, a nation who has God as their leader. And it's a nation that is grown out of the Abrahamic family and the Abrahamic covenant. As you read through the Old Testament, be on the lookout for themes of relationship, reconciliation, and how God is trying to close the gap between himself and his people, how he's trying to restore that relationship between himself and his people. And you'll see that, and we'll see that regularly together over the course of the semester. All right? See you next lecture.